We're near the end of 2025, which means we'll be getting an announcement on the new Total War games Creative Assembly is working on. And for many people, including yours truly, we do think that a Total War Warhammer 40k is on the cards. Not sure if it's going to be the one announced, but I'm pretty sure it was something Creative Assembly must have worked on or thought about at some point in time. Maybe it's coming down later down the line. It just makes sense. They were successful in making a Warhammer Fantasy Total War game, which did quite well, at least the first two games. And Fantasy is the smaller IP within Games Workshop, so it makes sense that they would be handed the big valuable IP of Warhammer 40k next. With a TV series in production and a bunch of other successful games recently released, Games Workshop would suggest Creative Assembly to hop on the Warhammer 40k bandwagon. But personally, I didn't think this was the right choice. It was purely a monetary or rather financial reason to make a Warhammer 40k game. Creative Assembly would have to figure out how to make it all fit. Instead of working on a new game that they could just figure out what's the best timeline or what's the sort of perfect game that has that natural fit for Total War. But in this case, they would be working with an IP that they would have to then jerry-rig into their Total War style of battles and stuff. On the surface, I felt like it didn't really look like the perfect fit, at least at first. In books, videos and games, we've primarily focused on smaller tactical engagements. Even the tabletop, for obvious reasons, is more tactical than representing the massive scale of battles in the Warhammer 40k universe. I think the best representation of combat in the Warhammer 40k universe, and especially the vibe of the setting, has to be Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. Fantastic game with deep tactical battles, but not very Total War-esque of course. And also small squad tactical engagements. No previous video game has ever managed to represent the scale of Warhammer 40k, millions of combatants duking it out for an entire planet. With battles that last weeks or months, technically it all seems like a pipe dream. Which game company could ever represent not hundreds, no, but we're talking about thousands of units on screen, fighting, shooting, casting psychic powers? Well, surely it would be Creative Assembly that could abstract an army of millions into an army of thousands on screen. But there is a problem. Warhammer 40k is such a complex setting. It's such a mishmash of battle types, Battles were inspired by stuff from across our history, from Roman armies and their disciplined legions to large-scale engagements in World War II. There are clear inspiration of even World War I style battles. It's like a mix of old and newer style of warfare. How do you incorporate this weird combination into a real-time Total War game that works? Well, the obvious thought many of you would have would be like, oh, we could combine Empire Total War with Total War Warhammer. It makes sense because one is based on muskets and gunpowder and the other has spells and melee engagements. But it can't be this, right? Because the key in Empire Total War is formations, lines and envelopment, versus Warhammer 40k's emphasis on cover, environmental cover, craters, buildings, choke points. There is a distinct difference here with Empire. This is a pretty massive difference from any other Total War game. How do you bring cover to Total War? Terrain types are doable. That could be a bonus or penalty when you are on that terrain type. Something that was done in Troy. Forests, ruins, created environments could just be a modifier to units moving on them. That I can see working. But urban warfare is also a touch complicated. I don't think the Total War engine was made for that. The closest are city sieges, which honestly I don't think any Total War fan were ever happy with how it was implemented. Or are we even excited to hear that, oh, we're gonna have siege battles, city siege battles in Warhammer 40k? Oh please, I don't want that if what we are going to get is basically how it works currently with city sieges. Which is why I don't think they will have urban engagements. All battlefields would be outside of cities. You probably would be able to see the city on the horizon of the battlefield, just out of bounds. Or as I said, it could look like a smaller scale city, like in a city siege battle. But as I said, then again, it definitely needs to be better than the siege battles currently, frankly. They'd have to rework it like to be almost nothing like the current system. There is also the trouble with special abilities of units, like some units such as Assault Marines could use jetpacks to get the drop on enemies behind heavy cover. So will there be a bit more micromanagement of unit abilities? If we had to micro large number of units, will Creative Assembly consider reducing the scale of battle, making it less about large battles and rather more about compact, condensed engagement? That would be a possibility to make each unit count more and make it easier to control them and their abilities better. But personally, I think that wouldn't make much sense because the strength of the Total War games are large battles. So to go back from this would be a step back, frankly, however you look at it. So it's not the authentic Total War experience. I am excited that we could finally get a Warhammer 40k game that for once could represent the true scale of warfare in the grim dark future, at least a lot closer to the actual scale of things. But anyway, do tell me what your thoughts are in the comments. Do you think CA will double down on making huge scale Warhammer 40k battles in Total War, or make it smaller in scale to account for unit special abilities with more emphasis on a new cover system? Do you agree that cover will have to be the big new feature they will have to add into this game? Share your thoughts in the comments. I did touch on what new Total War games Creative Assembly might announce next month. You can watch that video over here. Thanks for watching and farewell, noble friends.